the aiding and abetting of an invasion in our country happening for almost 3 years without knowing anything about the illegals coming in makes this country ripe for a similar kind of attack that Israel has had perpetrated on them. And if you think that'll never happen, then you need to climb out from under the rock you live under. Now, I find out coming home from hunting, we're going to have the dumbing down of our students in this state per the government. Are you kidding me right now? They don't have to show or prove that they have learned anything to graduate. It's just leaves them right for the indoctrination previously mentioned. And I call on everybody hearing and seeing me. If you truly want to preserve your freedom, then you need to wake up. The time is now, not later. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Okay, next I have Sam Dunlop.
That's what you're speaking on, but we're gonna have all the comment. Go ahead. Yeah, we're gonna put you on the spot right now. Thank you.
So my name is Sam. I'm the 22-192.
Can you speak into the mic?
Oh, you might have to turn it back on. Yeah.
You want a song first? There we go.
Yeah.
Is that on?
No.
Bonjour.
Yeah.
All right.
There we go. So my name is Sam Dunlop. I'm at 22-192 South Saline Road in Estacada. And I'm here to, local businessman. My wife and I created the Casadero. We're in the business for 35 years. And now we're working the motel. My folks put that together in 72. I'm the front desk clerk there now. And we're concerned about the new downtown ordinances that are going to change the makeup of the apartment complex that we have put together for that piece of property down there. So the one that most concerning is the no residences on the main floor. What it's going to do is reduce the ADA requirements because that first floor is so important, not only to our new motel access, but for retirement folks and older folks that need that help with the ADA compliant units. As far as that's concerned, the other thing is retail, and I'm familiar with retail because I have the Casadero complex there, and I have 5 businesses there. The businesses are struggling, not only there, but throughout the town, and having more is going to be a direct reflection on our way of business there, where we've had them for years. So I think that going forward, we should try to build up the existing businesses and build up the existing downtown traffic. And that's what I think an extra, all these apartments and the motel units are going to do. So it's important when we put together the 2011 downtown plan that housing was the main priority to try to revitalize the downtown. It was so important. And now we have a project there going forward where we're finally going to be able to build it out and make it beautiful apartments that overlook the river that everybody's going to be proud of. And then to come in and think that we have to put retail on the lower floor, which is going to eliminate a lot of the access to the folks. It just doesn't make sense. We have other places on that side of the highway with Andale, the vacant spot at Mobile, where you can put retail spots there, which makes a lot of sense because it faces the highway. Something on the back side of there does not make any sense to put retail spots there. And I've got a pretty good clue of what's actually going to work in Estacada. So I think we should embrace the fact that downtown apartments is going to benefit the entire community. And that's all I have to say.
Hey, thank you.
You can leave it on.
I'll leave it on.
Okay,
That would probably sing a song. Thank you very much for your
Thank
time.
you.
thanks, Sam.
Next, we have Carolyn.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Kibble. I have two things to talk about. First of all, I would like to recommend a city charter amendment clause for public input and a time frame change. The charter states half an hour time allocation for public input. Each citizen has 3 minutes for each commentary. I recommend the charter amendment would extend the half-hour time frame of public comment to 1 full hour, retain the 3-minute commentary, and allow a 30-second grace period after the 3-minute time frame. And that the public request would be that the city council would agree and vote in favor to allow citizens of Estacada additional time for comment and input. And I have something to give you if you want that. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. And then second of all, I'm going to be all over the place. So I talked last council meeting about my concerns about the code and issues that might have taken place at the hotel complex down there. And I was told by the city attorney that it was voted down. And I appreciate that and understand that, but I did ask what would happen if the people who wanted to build changed all of the code requirements and came back and asked for new consideration. And in looking at the downtown design code amendments, it seems to me that some of those amendments are specifically targeted towards the code change to allow the new building to go down there. And it's concerning to me because I don't think that's why the code amendment situation was put into place. It seems it's been adjusted very specifically for that development. And also the Traffic and Safety Committee has looked into beautification on Main Street. And it seems like some of the new code doesn't address what Traffic and Safety Committee had recommended: no bump outs, normal parking. And I see that in the new code, there's lots of small parking space notations. And I was concerned about that. Also, if code is changed, do people get grandfathered into situations that they're already built up or whatever? I mean, because if a new code takes place, does everybody have to adhere to new code? I mean, that was a concern. And, you know, what happens if a new code is approved? Who gets grandfathered into that? I think that's all I had. That's all I had at this time.
Thank you, Carolyn. Okay, Marcy A. Fletcher.
Hello, my name is Marcy Fletcher. I live at 1320 Northeast Cascadia Ridge Drive. You have in front of you a sheet of paper that has pictures on it. That's a picture of my home. So as you can see in the front yard there to the right, at the beginning edge of a flower bed is the beautiful 42-inch or whatever it is, green Comcast. Whatever it is, it's a pedestal of some sort. The picture that follows it in the middle there is landscape lighting wire that was cut. Perhaps by a shovel, who knows what. The picture down below that to the left is of the edge of my property with my neighbor's property, holes underneath the cement where it was not compacted and filled back in. This is more my neighbor's issue, but I thought I'd bring it to your attention because it could affect me as well. When I go over to the right one, the right picture that actually has a picture of the pedestal, when you step around that area, the ground is very soft. There is a sprinkler system. The entire line is there. I had a friend who stopped by my home when I was at work when they were doing the work on this, and she warned them, hey, there's a sprinkler system there. And they were a little bit curt and said, yes, we're aware of that. And she said, well, don't break it. They said they wouldn't. So either they didn't compact that dirt or there is in fact a leak down there. I did fire up the sprinkler system today. As you can see, the head is to the left at the edge of the flower bed. Its spray is being deflected by the pedestal, so it's not watering the bed anymore. They did dig up the dirt and the sod, and it's not laid back flat. So my question is, there was no community input on this, and so who is going to hold Comcast's feet to the fire for the quality of the work they're doing? And there's been a lot on the Nextdoor app. There hasn't been anything recently, but what is being done to address the issues of where there should be in-ground, level and flat vaults instead of this big pedestal? So who's holding their feet to the fire on that? Who do I talk to about this? How do I get this addressed? How do I get it fixed instead of me, the homeowner, incurring the cost of replumbing the sprinkler system so that it waters the bed, trying to camouflage that ugly green thing, and then repairing the wiring?
Yeah.
So we've been in daily contact with Comcast. The vice president of the neighborhood association, or vice chair of the neighborhood association, has been given direct contact information. There were discussions last week about vaults, how many vaults they need, et cetera. There were supposedly 3 meetings scheduled for today at Comcast. Some of their stakeholders were out last week. And they're well aware of the various issues. They've told us that they need sign off from the regional Comcast people. They don't have the unilateral ability to make that change themselves. They've said that those meetings are scheduled. Basically, our messaging to them has been that there's currently in-ground utilities, and whatever they do needs to be consistent with the length of those in-ground facilities, as well as the size of the vault. The size of the vault for other utilities has been, I can't tell exactly how tall it is, but it looks like it's about 12 inches to 16 inches. It's dark green in color, so it blends in with the landscaping far more than this does. I've personally forwarded those pictures to Comcast and said that what they're doing is not consistent with what's in the neighborhood already, both in the number of the vaults as well as what the vaults look like. They've acknowledged that that's the case. Basically also pointed out how much ill will they're creating in the community, and that the odds of people that were excited about Comcast. I mean, I've been told by people that they were excited about having options. Now they're not excited about Comcast. And so, they're very well aware of the issues. They've just done a reorganization. They said there's going to be an Estacada specific person next month. I told them that wasn't helping us with our current things. And so Melanie has been in very regular contact with them as well. I know because I'm copied on all those emails. So I wish I could represent to you, this is the exact outcome you're going to get. I can't. But what I can say is that they're very aware of the issues. They're in daily contact with us, and I would hope that they would have answers for us this week. And as soon as they do, my main point of contact has been the number 2 gentleman at that HOA. That's who I've been emailing directly and kind of relying on him to disseminate the information out. He's super polite. He very much wanted to encourage us to continue contacting Comcast, but he's very polite in his communication. So I assume he's kind of getting that information out. And as soon as I know more, I'll get him all that information and so will Melanie.
Does that help you, Marcy? I hope.
Yeah, that's appreciated. I mean, I have to tell you that at this point, I don't want them on my property, and if it was free, I wouldn't take it.
Yeah,
You
Yeah.
know, it's a beautiful neighborhood, all the other facilities and utilities are below ground. It should have been consistent.
definitely. And we're heartfelt. I know all of us here are heartfelt for what you've been going through. But hopefully we get some resolution off of this and this comes to you at a later date.
Mhm.
So,
Okay, well, thank you.
okay, thank you. Okay, Wally, Hansa.
Am I on?
I don't think it's on. Or did you just flip that? Is it?
Sometimes you have to turn it off and turn it back on because if it sits for a minute, it shuts down.
Can you
No.
hear me now?
Yeah, we got
Yep.
you.
Okay. Most of you probably know me by now. I'm becoming a frequent visitor to City Hall. I apologize that I'm not better prepared tonight like I would have been, normally would be. I'll still try to get my message through. I'll make it short, even though 3 minutes isn't a lot of time, but it seems a lot of time when you're sitting here talking to all these people. I'll just, cut to the chase here. I'm not at all happy and very concerned about this apartment complex that is going to be built down here on our waterfront. I think it's going to have an impact to this town like we've never seen before. We don't have adequate law enforcement. You already heard about the traffic situation around here. The only other thing I can think of at this point, again, I apologize for pausing. You people sitting on this council here were voted in to represent the people of this town. And from what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing happening around here, you're not representing the people of this town. And I will remind the citizens of our community, when your term is up, I will remind people, I'll remind our people, if you move forward with this apartment complex. I don't know, I've been searching, investigating whatever I can do to maybe come up with a better plan. I don't see that this is going to benefit our town at all. And when we start having trouble around here, I'll remind everybody. Well, guess what? How many of you believe in karma? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's all the request forms I have. Are there anybody online? Okay.
Is it Fox? Fox Haynes? We're trying to allow you to unmute. We see your hand up.
No.
Are they on there?
All right, if you tried Fox, I'm sorry, we couldn't hear you. We're gonna move along to the next person. Who is this? Mary Etheridge. If you want to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we
can
got
hear
you.
you.
All right. Hi, I'm Mary Etheridge, and my comment is, I believe there should be additional time allocated for public comment that is presently not provided at Estacada's council meetings. I have attended many city council meetings, planning meetings, and early transportation meetings in the past, all the while making comments. By the time I greet the council, state my point, or rather tell council or the planning commission the reason I'm here, I haven't had any time to share my questions, my inputs, concerns, or possible solutions in many different forums in front of this council. Besides having vague agendas that are misconstrued or lack of content thereof, on the public website, I struggled to find a forum to make a statement or a difference in this rapidly growing town of Estacada. That's why I'm asking for more time, the public input time frame change, and an ear, or just to say so. I feel like today there's been give and take. Council responded to what was stated earlier in comment zone. So I like that. I see that in a step in the right direction, that we can have a little bit more time to express opinions and points of view. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else on it?
Fox, we see your hand is still raised. We're going to try to allow you to unmute again. If you want to go ahead and please click unmute. Fox Haynes.
All right, Fox Haynes, is that the name that was on there? If you want to just call our city and see if you can get your question answered that way. We can't seem to get you on the line here, but we're sorry if we missed you tonight. So thank you for that. All right, that's all that I have in front of me. If there's no more questions, then I will move on to the consent agenda. You've all had a chance to read the consent agenda. You look at the appointments considered, and the Arts Commission and the Planning Commission both agree with those choices. So if I could get a motion on the floor.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, I have a first. Do I have a second?
Second.
First and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, next we are at department and committee reports. We have, I'll start off on this end. Mike, did you have any meetings this week?
Nothing.
Nothing? I made that easy. All right, we'll go on to the city managers report.
Okay, thank you. I was gonna share a little bit about Comcast, but we kind of already, whoops, I'm out of time. Since we were able to address that already, I'll just kind of skip over that. And I do want to say though, thank you to everybody for reaching out to us. Because we're hoping that they need a Comcast contact, that somebody that can resolve issues as this project is going on. And so we are doing our best to get that in order. But we will have to keep you posted, hopefully in the next couple of days with some more answers. And then secondly, I just wanted to say Main Street Uptown, from the bottom of the Main Street Hill all the way up to 6th is all paved now. And I'm sorry we didn't get more information out about that, because I think there was, when we did the patching at first, we had to dig out because you knew there was some significant sinking in the road from the traffic over the past 20 years, especially in the past few years. So that had to be dug out, repaired ahead of time, and then we were able to pave. And I wish that we would have put some information out there so people didn't think we were done when we had just done the initial repairs. But now you can see that it's looking good. We still have the striping and crosswalks. And then Public Works is going to be installing some push button flashing pedestrian signals at 2nd, where Clackamas River Elementary is, and up at 5th, where there's a big crossing for the middle school there. So those will also hopefully improve pedestrian safety, but it seems like it's coming out well. Tomorrow, the bid opening for downtown Main Street. And so that will be starting after the first of the, I'm thinking right after the first of the year. Probably depends on what weather winter brings us this year, but it will be happening early in 2024. So that will be great also. Cleanup day was on Saturday. I think a lot of people participated in that. Apparently they were lined up at 7 o'clock. It was starting at 8 and people started lining up at 7 in the morning and they were busy. As soon as they opened at 8 all the way until 11 o'clock, they filled up, I think it was 4 roll-off containers, a bit large, not dumpsters, they're drop boxes, 30 yards, and then a 40-yard one. Also, we sent one in and then brought another one back. And we, one of our parks crew was out there helping out, and he was able to use the backhoe and smash things down in the containers a little bit. So I think people were able to do a lot of cleaning out on Saturday. So hopefully that was helpful to the Estacada residents. And then lastly, just wanted to give you a heads up of something that might be coming. I noticed that the school sent out a message about their beautiful oak tree that is failing. And we also have had an arborist out here helping us, and at parks too, but in front of City Hall, helping us with our large, I think it's an elm tree. I can't remember what it is, but this leaf tree right here. And they cut out some heavy branches and put some cabling in it to make sure that it stays strong. While they were here, they noticed that one of our big fir trees is starting to become unstable. And so we're having them back out to reassess the other tree, also the other fir tree. And there's a chance that those are reaching their end of life, which will be a bummer. Probably not an appropriate word for a city council meeting, but that's how I feel about it. And those trees, they've been topped. I don't know when they topped them, but a long time ago they topped them and they've grown back and they're beautiful trees and they provide shade. But that we're gonna double check just to make sure that the information we're getting is accurate, but then we may end up having to take those down and replant or do something, but I'll keep you posted on that. That would be a big change to the look of City Hall. And I just wanted to give everybody a heads up that we are working on that. So there'll be an arborist out here climbing that tree tomorrow morning, if anybody is interested in watching. And that is all that I have to share for right now.
Okay, great. The police chief Mendoza was supposed to be here in
He
ICL.
he is here, yes.
All right. Let's hear from him. How are you, sir?
Good, thank you.
Is it on?
For having me.
Might have to go off and on.
All right.
There we go.
Yeah, thanks for having me. The most notable recent law enforcement issue in the city, as all of you are aware, was 2 weeks ago, the schools in Estacada were closed due to a threat. So I just want to touch on that real fast. The threat was made during school hours, and our school officials learned of this after hours, after parents and students had shared that information on social media. When the school officials became aware of it and concerned, they contacted our Estacada's SRO. He was off duty at the time. This was at 9:30 at night that they contacted him at home. And, to his credit, he began working on that right away, solicited help from the city deputy that was on duty at the time, Deputy Bigler. The two of them worked that case over the next 2 hours. They were able to identify and locate and detain the person that made those threats. So really, I have to say that, hats off to them that they were able to accomplish that in a short amount of time. The school district had already made the decision at that point to close the school the following day in an abundance of caution. And I wanted to just recognize a takeaway from this, that really this or anything else, right? When there's things that are concerning or a law enforcement matter, right, to encourage people to contact law enforcement directly, it really speeds up that process for the investigation. This case, as I mentioned, it was first shared on social media. Social media is a great way to communicate with your neighbors in the community, but law enforcement really needs that direct information. So you would just ask that if you share that with people, appreciate it. I share that with people all the time, just to call us directly. And we are concerned, and we'll look into things like that. And then the last thing is, I guess this will be a little bit of a teaser. I was looking at our crime stats in Estacada and was noticing that um, several of our areas were actually trending downward for calls for service, which is a great thing. And I'm preparing a end of the year presentation for the council. So just getting ready for that. And I'll take a look back and compare this year with the previous couple of years, just as I did at the beginning of this year.
Okay. All right. Any questions from those? Mike?
How's the emergency response training that was going to be offered to the different schools for situations like the one that came up a couple weeks ago going? And have you received volunteers for the training from each facility?
Yeah, we're currently still in the planning stages on that. So it hasn't started yet.
Okay.
Paul, could you give us an update on the timeframe for the additional deputy?
Well, we should have in 3 days a new deputy starting here in Estacada. This based off of exactly when he finishes his training, which should be tomorrow. Then we're going to give him 1 day off and bring him right back. But he'll roll into the city on the 26th, which fills the current vacancy. And then the additional position that we're adding is still slated for March.
Any other questions? Okay, we thank you for that.
Yep, thank you.
All right, we are now at council business. The downtown design code amendments. Now we'll hand this off to
That'd be me.
yep, Taylor.
Okay.
And if you're scrolling through your packet, it's, I believe, page 25. We have missed Sadie this week and need to be cross-trained on how to make a good PDF packet. So we'll work on that.
Okay, so let's see. Recently, we had on October 2nd, a downtown design review committee meeting for a project. And that meeting revealed some deficiencies and inconsistencies in the city's, in our development code. And so at your last council meeting on October 9th, there was some discussion about those deficiencies and inconsistencies, and the council expressed interest in making some of those possible changes that we described. And those included clarifying the transparency requirements, clarifying that whether the transparency requirements would apply to ground floor residential, prohibiting ground floor residential in certain parts of the downtown, specifically the riverfront area, and then defining which types of proposals will require committees to conduct a committee to conduct the downtown design review, or which types of proposals design review can be conducted by staff. So,
The material,
what's that?
materials consistent with the historic downtown look.
And yes. So on the second page of the staff report, I've got a bullet point list, basically summarizing the potential code amendments that we put together, just a initial preliminary draft to kind of show you, here's what we understood to be the council's intention from that preliminary discussion about it. So the bullet point summary of the text code amendments that you do have attached to this staff report are, one, exempt ground floor residential uses from that transparent element requirement. Currently, all new construction and remodels in the downtown zone are required to provide, I think it's at least 50% of the building's street facing facade must be transparent elements, so windows basically. And so that requirement seems to conflict with you know, a ground floor residential use. It would be pretty odd to have a wall of mostly window on your ground floor, on the ground floor of your home facing a street. And so, yeah, clarify, that's basically a question for the council. Is that really the intent of that part of the code, or would ground floor residential uses be exempt from that requirement, or, you know, only be required to provide, you know, a smaller percentage of windows on the ground floor, something like that? So it seems like we need to revisit that requirement. The second one is prohibiting ground floor residential uses in the riverfront area of the downtown zone. So that was another question that came up. Is ground floor residential a use that is intended for the vision of that riverfront area of the downtown zone? Currently, how the code is written, that whole area could get built up with entirely residential. And is that aligned with the goals of the Estacada downtown and Riverside area plan and our other economic development policies in our comprehensive plan? And then the next one is related to the list of building materials. So currently we have a list of preferred building materials that would, you know, that give guidance to applicants regarding what the exterior materials of their building could be. And the way that it's written right now is that is written into the scoring rubric part of the downtown design guidelines. And so that scoring rubric, everything in there is not a hard requirement. It's just a criteria that they could get points on, that could count towards their overall score for doing that design review. They have to get a minimum score from the rubric in addition to meeting the additional standard requirements in the zone. So what we're proposing there is, instead of having that be a sort of flimsy, it's not even a requirement, right? It's a preference that's kind of expressed in the code. Make that just a solid, you know, if we want to see specific exterior materials on the buildings in the downtown zone, we can make that just a clear and objective standard, and list that out as a regular standard rather than having it be a basically optional score that they can get in the rubric. So that's the first part of that bullet point, is converting it from optional to required. And then the second part of that is, well, I'm just gonna actually ask you to, it'll be easier if I just read the list of what's on that list now versus how we're proposing to change it.
And the other reason we're suggesting this is there was language in there that discussed of the character of the downtown. So the intent seemed to be that but it didn't say like the look of City Hall, you know, which is a kind of specific brick WPA look. It spoke to like the downtown, and there's quite a lot of different materials downtown. So, and that's not a clear and objective standard that people would know how to follow. So our thought was, if you just spec'd the materials, then that would turn what isn't a clear and objective standard into one that is.
Right. So the current list of accepted materials is brick veneer, stone, or split face concrete block, and clapboard siding, board and batten siding, or similar materials. And so we've proposed to actually remove the clapboard siding, board and batten siding, or similar materials, and make those potentially allowable if the design review committee finds the design sufficiently consistent with the you know, the intended look of the downtown area, and then add So the updated language, which would now be a requirement and not an optional thing. Exterior cladding shall be consistent with historic building design. Consistent materials include brick, brick veneer, stone veneer was added, stucco was added, or split face concrete block. And then we also added with wood accents or elements. Up to 50% of a building's exterior may consist of wood shake siding if coupled with brick, brick veneer, or stucco. That was included after some conversations about, okay, what about City Hall? City Hall has a really nice look. Is that a look that the council would be interested in, preserving or allowing on future buildings? So that's an option to include that too. And then clapboard siding, board and batten siding, hardy board, or similar materials may be approved by the Design Review Committee upon the applicant's demonstration that the proposed design is consistent with historic building design and applicable goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. So that, demonstrating consistency with applicable goals and policies of the comprehensive plan, that language is basically copied and pasted out of our conditional uses section. That's a standard requirement for a lot of land use applications to demonstrate how does our proposal, if someone's proposing something that the city council has decided they're not sure they want, then a lot of times the way that you can still sometimes allow those things is have the applicant demonstrate that it's still meeting the goals and policies that you have established related to those, whatever type of issue it is. I think I'm going to pause there before I keep talking and see if you have questions.
Mike, this is up your alley.
I just, how would we deal with materials outside of that list that people wanted to use that aren't a consideration for the design review?
As it's currently proposed, so as it is, I'll back up. As it is in our current code, because those material requirements are part of the scoring rubric, technically someone could get away with using any materials as long as they get enough points in all the other categories. Whereas what we're proposing is to take that and move it over to be a standard requirement. And so if you want to make sure that any type of material could be used, we would need to add that in and specify that and establish what type of extra review, would you want to allow that same extra review that I just described for clapboard, hardy board? Would you want to allow that for just any type of siding that wasn't on the standard list? Kind of up to open question to the council.
I'd just like to see maybe a bigger selection of options for people in developing it. Otherwise, just the city of Sandy comes to mind with how everything you're driving along the highway and they just force people to do the same look everywhere. And I'm not a fan of the look myself, but just a variety of approved materials. I think if we could get a longer list in there would be better. But
So instead of listing specific ones that are conditionally allowed, we could just specify other building exterior materials can be allowed as long as they meet the intent of the. And that way, if someone wanted to use something that we've never heard of before, but looks great.
Yeah.
They could use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Is that clear and objectionable enough?
Yeah, because the test that I always think of is if someone's never visited here before, can they read our code and come up with something that complies? And if they read this code and they're like, okay, well, I really like a stone exterior, then their architect can come up with that stone exterior and it complies, even if, it's, so we have said these are specifically allowed. And if you use them, then you don't have to go through this conditional process. If you don't want to use these materials, but you want something that's really consistent with the downtown look, then there's this separate path that would allow you to get through with it. It's just not a guaranteed outcome. So the design review could say like, well, this really isn't consistent with the look of the downtown, or not consistent with the look of the historic downtown. And that's kind of was the intent, was more of the 1930s, 1940s era buildings versus like maybe the building across the street. And so that kind of would allow them to get there and just give them more clarity. And then the other thing is the transparency, the glazing. In other jurisdictions, oftentimes why that's required is because a lot of the downtown units are like more live workspace. And so when you see the large windows, it's more consistent with a downtown look versus a lower amount of glazing, though this is something that, and again, that there was an these aren't in response to an application. We had an application that made us look through the code and flag some of these issues. And then it's the council's vision and values for what your downtown are going to look like. And we're going to implement, whatever those are legally, and so that they meet those clear and objective standards.
Any questions on this side? No? Okay, so you're looking for a motion to accept?
So, just, I wanted to pause so that to make sure I wasn't missing anyone's questions. There are two other things I wanted to call out that are included, which is adding definitions of compact parking and pedestrian amenities, just to clarify some of the development and design requirements that we found to be unclear during that design review. And then specifying that design review for projects. So what we're proposing is that we specify the threshold for when does the design review need to be conducted by a committee and when should it be conducted by staff. Speaking as staff, I would love to have direction from the code on that. That'd be awesome. So all of these are open questions to the council, but we thought about it, looked at some examples of other codes, and it seemed like it might make sense to have design review for projects that involve existing buildings. So they're redoing their, storefront or whatever it is. Those could be conducted by staff alone. Unless if the applicant wants a committee to review it, then they'd be entitled to that. Or if somehow, we might receive an application for a project that is an existing building, but it's highly complicated and, we notice things about our code or about the project where we don't have a super clear, we're not confident maybe in our interpretation of the code. It seems like it might be better for a committee to go ahead and do that. Then we would be able to designate a committee to do that review. And so that would be type 1. And then type 2 would just be any projects involving new structures would need to be conducted by a design review committee. And then we would specify the parameters for like public noticing for that committee and stuff. So we're recommending it would need to be noticed to the public at least 1 week prior to the meeting. But all of these are open questions. We can do more advanced noticing if that seems warranted. Open to your input on all of those.
I think definitely more notification to the public is pretty important stuff. We've seen that in the past. Everybody wants to know and everybody wants to be a part of it. And I don't blame them for that, not one bit. So I think more notification definitely in a longer span of time. 1 week is not enough time for people to absorb that kind of information, and I know sometimes it takes a while to scan these and try to figure out what's all happening. So that would be number 1 on the list, that we give plenty of notification time. Anybody?
How many people, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
How many people on the design review committee were you think, I think I did read in there somewhere, but.
Yeah, our code currently doesn't specify, but it'd be nice if it did. So I recommended a minimum of 3, which feels small, but yeah.
I always think more, I don't know, 5? Then you could get a bigger pool from.
Yeah, and I'm in agreement with that. I think
Yeah.
more is better than fewer. Only because it involves so much. I mean, it's like this 100 units down here. We're not talking about just a small development here. We're talking a pretty large one. And I think more eyes on this and the things that happen in the future would be beneficial to us.
Now, one problem that came up with this recent recruitment was we did reach out to a lot of different people that met the criteria, which are the current criteria for people who can serve on the design review committee, according to the code, are downtown property owners, merchants, or design professionals, and it ends there. And so we then had the task of contacting and finding out who's available, and a lot of people weren't available. And so we ended up with a really small design review committee for this last one. And so it'd be nice this isn't in there right now, I'm just thinking about this right now. It'd be nice to be able to fall back on, okay, if we can't get at least 5 design review committee members to volunteer, could we punt the design review to the planning commission or the city council? Just because I think we would run into legal issues if the city, dragged its feet on conducting the review just because we couldn't get enough volunteers.
Yeah, Jerry.
Can we just designate it as a committee, form the committee, like the rest of our committees that we have in city? Can we just form the committee, appoint, have people apply, appoint people, council appoints them, and then their meetings are just as needed, I mean, it seems like we might be able to get 5 people to consistently go to, if they're appointed, if they apply for it and are appointed by the city, that might be something worth looking at.
Yeah, I want to say one thing before I'll call you, Paul. By giving them more time too, I think we've solved that issue. It's the timing. If you're calling somebody, on a Monday for a Friday meeting or whatever the case may be, it doesn't leave very much time to put your week together. So if you're giving them more time, obviously you're going to have more response, and people are going to be able to schedule that into their busy schedules, and maybe you'll get more people at the table versus starting another committee. We already have enough committees out there and people having to watch over them. I just think it gets to be too much after a while. So maybe we should try this first and see where we go with it before we look into a committee. Paul?
I think Heidi was up.
So my whole thing was about the scope of the committee. I'm concerned about blame being placed on members of community. So when we did the charter review committee, we made our recommendations to council. Now I know that would delay decisions, but it seems to me like maybe they could be advisory and give their recommendations to us, and then we make the decision.
Paul?
I was just going to chime in as well too, that I think the challenge is getting enough people to participate as well too. I don't know that we would need another committee for it, formal commission anyway, but if we expanded it, if we wanted to go with 5, something along those lines, but expanded it to citizens within the city limit as well too, maybe 3 per what you had proposed, Taylor, and then the other 2 being open it up to citizens as well too, that they could be a part of it.
Okay, yeah.
As a thought.
Or we could have the planning commission. If it went to the planning commission, that would be kind of a natural. Some cities have an architectural review board, but this is for a relatively, it's not the entire city. It's just the downtown. But you guys can certainly form an ad hoc committee and populate it however you want. And that might be a good discussion to have. And then as far as the code goes, the code's going to be developed over time. So just kind of getting a consensus about things like transparency on the first floor, uses allowed on the first floor, materials, if their material staff's missing, that should be part of it, allowed outright. And then again, one of the things we discovered is we have compact parking allowed as a percentage, but we don't define the site. So we looked at kind of best practices for that, as well as, a lot of folks in the Estacada community may drive a larger vehicle than in like Milwaukee or other cities. And so for parking to work, it needs to work for the community. And so that's something to consider too, is are those are those parking, I mean, ADA is specified by the federal government, but the other thing are, you know, are people able to park and access things?
Yeah.
So those were kind of the conversations we were having as we worked through this.
Okay, all right. Mike?
I like the idea of a 5-person committee, 4 to have a quorum on the design review committee, and then if they can't meet that, then it goes to the planning commission personally.
Seeing several nods. Okay. Great.
And then I don't have any issues with the compact parking definition as well too. I looked it up, looks like you used other areas what the definition is for compact parking, so it seems pretty standard, just good to get that defined.
What about transparency?
I
For
think
residential.
residential should be exempt from.
Everybody else in agreement on that?
And that's just residential in general. We're not talking the first floor residential at this
We're
point.
talking only exempting the ground floor residential from the transparency requirements. And you could make the argument, this is also, all of these are open questions to the council. You could make the argument that it's a little less, feels a little less, you know, invasive to have bigger windows on a second or third story, right? Than if you're on the street level ground floor, feel a lot more exposed probably.
So that one's kind of a moot issue then, if we are going to prohibit ground floor residential.
It's a moot issue if you're going to prohibit ground floor residential in a certain area. So that's the other
Okay.
big question is, currently the transparent elements requirement just applies throughout the downtown zone. But as we were going through this review, it really seems like that transparent elements requirement was drafted with ground floor commercial in mind. And so how do you want to, how do you reconcile that with these assumptions that we also seemed to have about the types of uses that would get built throughout the downtown zone? And so basically checking back in with the council, currently we prohibit ground floor residential in the downtown zone only along Broadway and Main Streets. Is that the only area that you want to prohibit ground floor residential, or what we currently have proposed in here is prohibiting it? We just added to that list of street frontages that it's currently prohibited from to include, to basically capture the riverfront area of the downtown zone. So we just added the street names that would help to capture that. But you all could choose to reduce that, change that, take that out.
Go ahead.
And there's an example of multifamily units that meet that transparency requirement. The 2-story fourplex on, I think it's on 3rd Street.
Zobrist.
Yeah, Zobrist, that they meet the transparency standards. It's kind of a more mid-century modern look that's got, you know, a lot of glazing on the front. So if you want to think about how practically does that look, or how does somebody meet the standards, that's an example of a project that did.
Yeah, and I like that. That's very nice looking. Okay, any more questions there? John?
Just looking for clarification. So what we're discussing here is 2 separate items, right? Or we're discussing code amendment for not allowing ground residential. And then also for on the transparency side of it, we're also saying going forward, we would make it exempt for residential outside of specific zoning, or excuse me, streets, whatever you're.
Just anywhere that ground floor residential would be allowed, would you want to exempt it from that minimum transparency requirement? Which, that's a good example, Peter. It is absolutely doable and looks great at that project, to meet the transparent element requirement and that is ground floor residential. So, but yes, those are the 2 questions we're asking.
Yeah, I'm just clarifying that they are two separate line items that we're
Mhm.
discussing here, right? Just so that everybody's on the same page.
Thanks.
Okay. So seeing as there's no more questions, what exactly do you want this vote to read?
So, we will need to understand whether or not there are any changes. If you want us to move forward with any amount of these potential amendments, we'll need to understand what the changes are. And so I'm gonna summarize what I think they are. We want to extend the amount of public notice for design review committee meetings. I'm just gonna recommend that we just do the same thing we do for land use applications, which is a 20 days before the public hearing. We need to have a notice published in the paper.
That sounds fair.
And if you want, we could also do the same thing that we do with land use applications where owners of property that's within 100 feet of the affected property also receive a notice in the mail.
Yes, I like
So we'll
that.
just do the same thing as land use applications.
And that's just.
I'm
for
seeing
the-
nods,
That's
so.
just for the one with the committee, not if it qualifies for staff review, we don't have to post. Is that right?
That's right. If it qualifies for staff review, we can notice it, but there wouldn't be a public meeting about it. It would just be an informational notice. We can do that.
And I think that would be good practice. I mean, whether they can be a part of that meeting or not, just to notify. It speaks openly from us, which I would prefer going forward.
Okay.
Would there be a meeting though? I mean, these are things we're talking about, facade improvements or something like that.
Right. There, I wouldn't think we would hold a meeting because it would just be the staff. We could if you wanted us to.
I think it's just more as
But-
like a heads up to community members. Hey, this business wants to,
The
you know,
trails is putting in a new sign.
right, or repainting this building, just heads up.
Yeah, and what we would do is we would let them know, here's the code criteria that they have to follow. And we are going to do the review and we'll publish our staff report of the decision by X date. And those property owners could, the neighbors could contact us and say, we disagree with you. You missed this part. You didn't notice that this code criteria wasn't met. We would invite them to contact us with any questions or testimony. It just wouldn't be, as it is now, it wouldn't be a public meeting.
There was a lot of concern expressed about the public not knowing about projects that are going on. And outside of if you don't read the newspaper and you're not an adjoining property, how else are members of the public going to be notified about projects that are coming up for review? Is there a place on the website that we could direct people to look for notifications outside of that, or?
There will be, and there used to be, and then we had about a year or however long it's been of a really frustratingly disappointing website experience. And we are about to transition to a new website, which we're really excited about. And it seems like it's going to work a lot better for us. And my hope is that we'll be able to reinstate the, I don't know if we'll still call it this, but basically a projects page where you can look on a map, or it might have to first live as a list. But we will have some page that gets updated, at least listing different projects that have been approved, and they might be categorized by these are land use approvals and these are city projects, right? But
We do have a page for public notices though, for like when we're doing the budget, or if you use that page, right, for land use notifications also? The Public notice page?
is it we just post it as like a news announcement, I think, and you can click public notice. Does that send it to the
And
public
there
notice
is a
page?
public- Yeah.
Then it shows up there,
on
yeah.
Yeah, so we could have that, so people could check on the website, if they just want to keep in touch with you. It's hard because it's hard for people, I know, because you get busy, people in the community, they do get busy and it's hard to always check in, but that's kind of what, as things are coming up, is we're putting out information. That's kind of just something to check up on.
I don't mean to rabbit trail off on this too much, but do you know how often you would update that? Would that be, when you to get the new website going? Would that be, we're gonna put updates every Monday or just as they come, or, well, you know, what you're
Be
kind of
great to have a
thinking?
schedule for it.
That way
It's-
community members know like, okay, every, you know, Monday at 8, the website's getting updated with new projects and this, and I can go and check that and know that that's a constant every Monday at 8 o'clock. or
We,
whatever.
we put the public notices on as they come up, but like Taylor was saying, they have to be out there for a certain amount of time. So if you checked on it, like set a schedule and check every Monday or whenever, then you would catch whatever had been updated in the last week. So it's hard to commit to updating it for a variety of projects that might be going on at different times, but as we do update it each week, I think that's a great suggestion for people to just check it, you know, once a week and share it out with your friends or whatever, you know.
Hey, John.
On the note of like going the extra mile on our behalf, especially going with the transparency conversation, right? What trouble would it be for you guys to utilize social media for this? Like, I know that people have been watching more for like cleanup day, Oktoberfest, certain things like that. That was notated that people were responsive on your, my mind's slipping me
It's
right
okay,
now,
or
sorry.
Facebook
But
page.
yeah, we'll just call it your Facebook, your analytics is the
Oh,
word
yeah,
I was
yeah.
looking for. So what trouble would it be for us to go the extra mile and make a Facebook post or to interject something into a
Mhm.
group just to give that little bit of extra, like, hey, just so you're aware, this is going on.
Mhm.
I think the idea here mainly like there's procedures, period, the end, there's code, period, the end.
Mhm.
But what we're trying to establish here is trust, right?
Right,
And,
go the
and a line
extra
of
mile.
communication that's open with the community. So I'd say, what can we do to go the extra mile or what can your staff do? Can we,
Mhm.
you know, you talked about scheduling, you could schedule posts to do that.
Yep.
But is that something that we could look at as well?
That is definitely something we could look at. I think that we don't typically post, we don't like go into other like community pages and make posts. We do that so you can always check the City of Estacada Facebook page or Instagram. And then that gets shared out a lot though. So if we put information out there, is that what you were
Yeah,
thinking?
we can quite easily we can basically duplicate the public notices that we send to the newspaper for like like a subdivision is coming through or a design. Now we're going to be public noticing design review. Anything that we public notice for land use or development, we could post on the city's social media just as like an informational post. And then as Melanie was saying, those like we're not allowed to participate we wouldn't be allowed to post something in one of the local groups. But you all could post, any of our committee
Share it.
members or
Mhm.
counselors could post in those groups.
I think in
Um,
building engagement within the community on behalf of the city's social media anyway, right? Opening lines of communication that people might feel more comfortable communicating with you, especially in the younger populace, right? So if we can maybe look at, like you're saying, it doesn't need to be detailed to the T of what it is, but if it can direct them to, there is new information on the website. I mean, we can go 60 and ask them to come 40 kind of thing. I don't say that we have to interject into the public forums and get into arguments on theories and you know
Yeah, we
what
could
I
def-
mean. We'll
we
go
could
over that.
definitely do that though. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I'm glad you brought that all up. Social media seems to be the way. We were just talking about that a few minutes ago, but you know, with the new age and young families buying into this whole area, I think communication is important between the city and those out there. So that makes sense. Thank you.
So does the big thing is like ground floor residential.
Yeah, so I will need clarity if we have it, need to know if there's a majority in support of exempting ground floor residential from that transparency requirement, or do you want to keep it in? Maybe you want to discuss it a little bit more.
And that would be the whole downtown. So right now, there are certain areas where ground floor is prohibited and everywhere else, it would be allowed, but there are those transparency standards similar to the units on Zobrist. So regardless of whether you expanded other areas downtown to say no ground floor residential, I don't know whether you'd want to do that or not, the question becomes, okay, in other areas where it might be allowed, do you want those similar transparency standards? Or do you want those to go away? Or to, you know, go from 50 to 40, kind of whatever it is, just so that we can have that clear and objective standard. And then, you know, the next conversation would be, do we want to expand? Do you as a council want to expand the prohibition to other areas, or do you want to keep it? And then I think we kind of have consensus on the compact parking, the recommended amount. So you guys are entitled to vast deference in your interpretation of your code. So I've seen a lot of nods on that. So then that right away, we can say we have clarity from our council that this is what they mean by compact. The rest we'll need to bring, and we'll want to codify that. But right now we kind of have that understanding. And then the other things we'd want to bring back as a discussion, which means you could change your mind later. Like if you're thinking today, hey, maybe less than 50%, but then you want to go look and see different examples, and you can always say, yeah, I've looked at some stuff and I've changed my mind. The same thing with all these different standards, you know, as you kind of educate yourselves, as you look around the downtown at building materials you think look great, you know, you might want to say, hey, we want some more on this objectively allowed, doesn't have to go through design review list, or I really don't like that, maybe we should take that out. So we assume you'll educate yourselves down the line, but we want to get you some language for your consideration kind of sooner rather than later if we can. And members of the public will have a lot of opportunity to comment on kind of the type and character of materials that, you know, they really like about the downtown too. I think probably a lot of members of the community have ideas about their favorite buildings or materials or stuff like that.
Yeah, I like that. All right, so the question you need answered right now is the transparency, right? On the ground.
Yes. On the ground floor transparency requirements, currently we require 50% transparency. If you have a residential use, do you want to, that's a great point. You could just reduce it. If you're not quite sure, you could just reduce
You
it
don't
to a
want like
smaller.
solid wall. You don't want a solid wall with just like tiny windows. I
I
don't
think
that would be very-
reducing the residential is a good idea. Not so much eliminating, but reducing that so that we have some transparency on there. And then I favor the transparency in all of the downtown, riverfront included. I mean, that's an area that we're going to get a lot of traffic that we're talking about redoing. So if you're going to talk about that, and we need to prepare for that, right?
Mhm.
But I don't know, anybody?
Well,
I'm fine with 50%. Personally, I think it's a clean look. Just think of the one over on Zobrist. I'm open though myself, and we're talking just adjusting residential. We're not
Correct.
talking commercial. So
Correct.
from that standpoint, I'm good. So, and that would be just retaining 50% too, correct?
Right. It's right now it's
Yes.
50%.
Any other feelings about 50% or reducing?
I'm okay with the 50% myself.
Yeah, I think I'm with Paul on this one. I think that it's a clean look.
Same, I don't have any issues with it. 50% is good.
And that's on the residential, right?
Yeah.
that's on everything. Yeah.
Okay, and then the other kind of big question of allowing ground floor residential in that riverfront area of the downtown zone. Would it be helpful for you to have a zoning map in front of you? We have laminated zoning maps. You've all got the area in your mind.
So this is the tricky one.
What?
The tricky one.
Yes.
Because currently reading the downtown zone, that where it defines kind of what's allowed in there, 16.26.010, the downtown zone, it says intended or adopted in 2011, the zone encourages a mix of office, service, retail, light manufacturing, and governmental uses. The D zone also allows residential uses in upper stories of commercial buildings and high-density residential and mixed-use residential and commercial development oriented to the Clackamas River. So it says it allows it currently, as I'm reading it, but then we've got that 50% requirement, the density requirement, which seems to say that they were intending it to be commercial on the bottom. That's just my interpretation, but that's what it seems to say for me. And but now it's coming to the council to try to go back and figure out what they were thinking when they came up with this vision and meld that with what we think the vision should be as well too for the downtown area. Is that kind of a
You're on
roundabout?
it. Yep,
Okay.
you got it.
Well, if past council can't bind a future council, so you always have the ability to. And you know, as I think about Estacada in 2011, and I think about Estacada now, there's a dramatic difference in the city. Downtown and in other parts of the city in 2011, I wasn't reviewing many land use applications at all. And people were, you know, it was very different 12 years ago. And so the question with all these codes are, does the vision and values and the priorities that were passed at that time, are those still the vision and values of the priorities? Or, you know, what is it that you want in this, as far as public access and all those things? And that's kind of so again, we can interpret kind of the intent, but your intent could have completely changed, you know, over that 12-year period, or the community intent or what they really would like to see could have changed as well. We don't know. Fortunately, you're elected to kind of help figure that out so that we can make sure that your code reflects what people are looking
Heidi,
for.
and then Jonathan.
So my question is, depending on how big the building is, could we designate, say, on the waterfront, that only the waterfront facing is commercial and the back can be residential? That is not public facing.
You could, I mean, we could figure out how to write that. You guys really have a lot of discretion in how you want to do it.
I think with going off of what the intended is, what we're trying to decide here or decipher here is what the vision for the community is now, correct? Like before we go forward creating codes, we want to talk about what the community wants. And in 2011, when this was being drafted, I don't think that Deuce was probably even a consideration. Verde Heights, Campanella was still a meadow at the time. I mean, so when we're talking about it being proposed for residential purposes, in my mind, unbiasedly, I look at, well, the community has grown, maybe not in the downtown sense of things, but it has grown, right? So as far as population is concerned, I think that we are driving towards that objective. However, when I look at downtown and what I want my kids to see and comparable things, I think about some of the other cities in the surrounding area, and I do want to see a more modern retail look. I would like to see something more inviting for other commercial people, other commercial entities to come in and provide more resources, make our town more touristy money in the summer and different things like that. That being said, I agree with what Mr. Dunlap said about propping up the existing community and the existing people, businesses that are working there. I think absolutely we should offer support in that and that, but I don't think we close this off and say those guys are it and the rest is for residential. I think we look at how do we make this a more marketable, a more welcome place. And then my mind deters towards, I think about traffic and I think about crime and I think about things like that. And I know that this is for code amendment, but when I look at like retail and stuff like that, that's not permanent. That's coming and going, not somebody sitting there all the time. And another thing I'd like to comment, and then I'll digress, is we've heard a lot about people wanting to protect the riverfront specifically. Like everybody keeps commenting even about the waste treatment thing, about how it impacts that beautiful riverfront and our touristy thing there. So are we damaging what the community wants in allowing residential in there and not commercial, whereas commercial would be more touristy, bring more populace to that entity that is the riverfront, like those would be my thought processes on this. Again, unbiasedly speaking, how do we meet the objective of what grows the community now, not 10 years ago, not 12 years ago, but now, like where are we at now?
Okay, Paul?
My thoughts on this, I don't like the idea of just a full, large multifamily place down there, but I also know that Estacada needs more multifamily as well too. We had the housing needs analysis that we got to keep looking back to that identified that. So there is a need in this area for multifamily. I tend to agree with something that Sam said as well too about propping it up with a lot of retail underneath. That I'm not convinced there's a demand or not convinced that retail will be filled as well too. I wonder if a compromise would be, could we do something like 50% retail or the end caps be retail, something along those lines? And then we can allow more ADA compliant, I don't know if we can specify that or not, but it would allow for more ADA compliant units, residential units on the ground floor as well too.
Mike?
The way I read the intent of the code back then was there's areas in the downtown zone that are for community use where you want to drive foot traffic and allow both tourists and people that live here to enjoy those spaces. Whereas a full-on apartment complex is going to be utilized by only the residents that live there. It's not going to be welcoming to tourists or to other people in the community that want to enjoy the riverfront in that area. And so I like the idea of requiring the ground floor commercial and residential being allowed upstairs like it is in the rest of the area. It's the same standard we applied to the project that was going to be done over at McCrae's. And that project came undone because the same thing, they wanted to do residential on the ground floor and it wasn't allowed. And I don't think that was the vision for having that right in the downtown zone. And I think I'm okay with applying the same standard to the property south of that. One clarifying question though, is that in the discussion, it says prohibiting ground floor residential uses in riverfront area of the downtown zone, which we would consider to include all parts of the downtown zone that are south of Highway 224. And I just didn't find that noted in the code that way. What it says in the code is it was referencing frontages. And it did include all the frontages south of Highway 224.
You're right about that.
I like the definition in the discussion. I don't like the definition in the code.
Okay, we could change it to match the discussion if we end up moving forward with that piece and other people agree. That's an easy change.
So
Go ahead, John.
sorry about that. So what I'm just clarifying, you're suggesting that we open it up to retail on the bottom and then residential above, kind of that multi-purpose?
Multi-purpose, the way it is in the rest of the downtown zone, like along Main Street and Broadway, to match the conditions that are existing on Main and Broadway.
And that's really the way I'm looking at, the level 1 salon that they have on the bottom floor and kind of what the vision and values that the people in the community of Estacada wanted when we were first looking at the downtown area. And I also, just to piggyback off of what Michael was saying, just in regards to the pedestrian amenities for public socialization, I like the way that that's worded in there. I think that's great. So with that, I'm in favor of doing the retail space below, kind of like what we've got going on over here, and just having that be more streamlined with our downtown vision from feedback I've gotten from members in the community. And there can be a livable space above, so.
And Jerry?
My concern with this is empty retail spaces. That's my concerns, just, we already have empty storefronts on, in Estacada, and that would just be my big concern is empty spaces. I kind of like the idea of what Heidi suggested earlier, where the front side of the bottom floor, the street side facing be retail, and then the opposite side would be okay to have residential. I'm just, like I said, I'm just concerned of, empty retail spaces.
I want to comment before we go any further. When we developed the riverfront proposal years ago, and we talked about what we wanted down on the riverfront, and we talked about the path that's going in, we got a design for the path that's going to go down there. And we talked about outfitters moving down by the creek, and we weren't sure if that would really be great or if it would work, but now Outfitters is seeing hundreds of people in the summertime that are looking for a place to go that has retail by the waterfront, where you have all the trails that you're putting in and all the bulb outs that we've got planned for the future. So it seems to me that we're kind of not looking at the bigger picture here. When we say that we're worried about filling the storefronts, because we've got the people coming here now and they've got nowhere to go. They have to come up into town to see anything, and we're missing a vital part of it. I mean, they're right there on the riverfront. And how do we develop the riverfront in a way that's progressive, that says, hey, welcoming to tourism and all that, if we don't look at that as being an option? So that's what I worry about. Melanie.
Can I just clarify too, that it's not just retail, but when it's commercial, I believe would it be all the things that are listed as being allowed in the downtown zone? So it could be a retail store. It could be personal or business service, like barbershop or a salon. Could be professional offices, medical offices. It could be a museum or art gallery, a restaurant, coffee shop, a place for a tour, like a chamber tourism office or something.
Daycare.
Daycare, yeah, it could be. There's a lot of things that it could be, not just retail. Just what would that fit, actually thinking about how that would develop out there? Because I hear, what Sam had said also, and I know there's another, in our riverfront commercial zone, we require an element of commercial on the ground floor. It doesn't really specify how much commercial it has to be, but there has to be something commercial on the ground floor. And I know that has held up some folks who would like to develop in the riverfront commercial area, because they're trying to figure out how to make that pencil and how to make it, not just be an empty space, but be activated and be something that's good for that neighborhood. But it would be, there's a lot more options than just a retail space, just to call that out.
I think it would encourage new businesses, to be honest with you. If you built a new building, a new structure that had commercial use, you got brand new and it's river access. To me, that's inviting. Now, I'm not a professional. I don't recruit people to come here and move into to the city by no means, but I would think that it would be inviting for something even like a bike shop or something like that to come. We could even reach out to other communities and ask what they've done with this kind of space. But I would say that a commercial use is more appropriate to what the design is for the bottom floor. I will agree with Councilman McElroy on the top being residential, because it just matches what we're already seeing. We're not, our objective here is also to grow the community. So, just give take.
And I think reducing the crime rate. You got to look at the crime that's happening in Estacada and some of the main areas, Lakeshore being one of them, that's been ongoing. And we've never really thought of a way, but I think if you build business in that area and you bring attention to it more so, you're going to see less crime in that area because there's going to be more eyes on it. It's going to work all the way around, not just with the people living there. So it's a thought.
So what are we hearing?
I think that I'm hearing, so what I'm overall hearing, and we'll be prepared to discuss, different options than this, but it sounds like we're leaning towards not exempting ground floor residential uses from the transparency requirement. But yes, prohibiting ground floor residential uses at least in the parts that face directly to the river, if not in all parts of the downtown zone that are south of Highway 224. So we do still have that kind of open question of, are we going to do the whole part of downtown that's south of 224 or just require it or prohibit residential ground floor on the part that faces the river? If we're prepared to, be great if I could walk away with clarity on that, but I'm not sure.
Just to clarify, you're saying that the pieces that are facing the river would have retail and everything facing the highway, Acacia and Larch, Acacia, Larch
And beach.
and Beach
Right.
would be just, so it'd just be one, it would just be anything facing Lakeshore.
Yeah, I guess that's how it would work, even though Lakeshore doesn't go all the way through. It's a little, that would be a little bit, it's doable, but it would be a little bit wonky to, it's wonkier to, sorry, that's not an official word. It's a little more complicated to craft that, the language to accomplish that, but it is possible.
That section of Lake Shore is in the downtown zone. The other section of Lake Shore is not in the downtown zone, though.
Right.
I don't know if that
So
would help.
there are kind of three ways that it could be approached. One, it could be what units are, how are they facing? The other would be prohibition on the first floor. And the third approach would be a percentage. So what was mentioned, somebody mentioned maybe the end caps are retail, other commercial use, and then they're also units. So we could craft that in any of those manners. That the two that would be easiest to craft would be the percentage or just a straight prohibition, but we can figure out how to word it if there's certain units that would be allowed as residential and others that aren't. I mean, we can figure out how to do it. It's just a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, we just need to understand the intent. Basically, do we want to prohibit ground floor residential in the whole part of the downtown zone south of the highway, or are more of you leaning towards some kind of mix there? I think maybe that's a simplified way.
Okay, so let's just make it easy. If you want the first option she just mentioned, where it's all under that zone, raise your hand. Okay, if you're not, and you want the other option, raise your hand.
Partial.
Okay,
So you got
All
3
right.
on 4.
got it. We'll be prepared for both.
And you can always change your mind.
Yeah.
That's why we do public testimony and all that.
Sure.
Is because you as a council always keep an open mind and examine the evidence in front of you, because that's what everybody expects. So this in no way means that this is exactly going to happen. It's just the draft we're going to bring you is kind of going to reflect this initial idea.
Yep, that's right. And so in the meantime,
Which is the prohibition on the ground floor.
Thank you.
and so in the meantime, thank you so much for participating in this. In the meantime, so we'll work on that. We would gladly accept your thoughts and input on like building exterior materials, just anytime. I mean, you can shout them out now, but you can also just email us as you're walking around town. Same goes to members of the public that have opinions about the exterior materials that are allowed on buildings in the downtown zone. By all means, just go ahead and email us planning@cityofestacada.org. Because it sounds like that's a list that we want to expand the list of specifically allowed uses.
I was okay with, as long as there's an option for a variance, if someone proposes a beautiful product that people are okay with, the design review committee thinks reflects the look of the downtown, just having the door open instead of just a cookie cutter that
Yeah.
has to be these specific items.
Okay, yeah.
I think we
Because
got
what'll
lots.
happen is people will tend to lean towards whatever the cheapest option is in that material list. That's what you're gonna get a whole lot of.
Mhm.
And you're not gonna get anything that has a greater cost per square foot, and then everything's gonna look identical, and then it's not gonna have, I mean, I think that's not a good look personally.
Right, yeah.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I think all of us agree on that one.
Okay, thank you so much for all the direction.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, moving along, we are at the second consideration for ordinance 2023-006, an ordinance amending chapters 13.08 storm sewers of the Estacada Municipal Code. So you need a vote on this, and this
Yep,
is for,
This was passed at your last meeting, your prior meeting, and then we just have it in front of you again to make a motion and vote on again, and then it will
okay,
be 30 days before it goes into effect.
okay, can I have a motion on the floor?
I move to approve ordinance 2023-006. An ordinance amending chapter 13.08 storm sewers of the Estacada Municipal Code.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, we are at the next citizen and community group comment. I don't have any in front of me. Are there any online?
There's one.
Oh, we got one right here. All right. Be sure I get that. Thank you.
Got one.
You got one online too?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Sarah, you'll have to turn that mic on again.
Hello.
Yeah, you're good.
Sorry, I wasn't going to speak, but after listening to you and the comments that were made about supporting small businesses and businesses in our town, and that the main focus would be housing, I have something to say now. The business that is there now has impacted my house and my lifestyle. I've moved here about 6 years ago, and every morning at 4 a.m. I run to the gym. I don't do that anymore because of how this business is so poorly run. I cannot do that. There is so many people that are living in the parking lot that I cannot run past there in the morning. 4 a.m. in the dark with those people yelling at each other, screaming, they're in the street. It's you can't do it. There's a whole town in there that has walls, water, everything. So I'm all for having businesses in there, but who's gonna hold their feet to the fire? Like, you just do whatever you want there. I've had my property stolen and taken back to that parking lot. Nobody's doing anything about it. And now you want to add in more businesses so that he can have a fatter pocket? I don't agree with it. He can't run the business he has now. So why are we supporting this? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, I have one online.
Scott, are you able to unmute yourself?
No, I didn't have a comment. I'm sorry. I just accidentally hit the button.
Oh, no worries.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. So that's all the online. All right. Moving along, we are now at mayor and council reports. So I will start off with Jonathan. You get to open it up tonight. Words of wisdom.
I just want to say thank you for the big crowd, the big turnout. I know that it's appreciated across the board, but to me personally, what I asked is that the more of you show up and fill those seats, and I'm seeing it. So we appreciate that. That's how we can make decisions that are in your interests with you here. And I'd also like to thank you for coming up to the microphone respectfully and working on the communication skills. There's been a lot discussed tonight, and obviously these conversations are going to continue, but our heart here is to serve this community and not our own interests. But I would like to make it clear on behalf of especially the staff here that their objective in this is to follow the code, the letter of the law. It's not their opinion on whether this should or should not go or nothing like that. They are here simply for compliance and to follow the letter of the law. So all of this that you've heard tonight is based on following rules. It's none of this is an emotionally charged thing, and I'd just like that to be clear.
I'd also like to thank everybody for coming out, big crowd again. Thank you, staff, for all the amazing work that you do. I want to reiterate what Chief Mendoza said earlier. If you see something that is against the law, you hear something, please report it. A lot of issues that happen in Estacada go unreported, but we got to get the police involved. The one incident was reported, and 2.5 hours later they had it under control, but it waited for a Facebook post and then the school getting word of it in order to get the police involved. So if you see something, report it. If it's against the law, if there's if there's a threat to people, we need to report it. Thank you, guys.
Thanks everyone for coming out as well too. I appreciate the input, really do. It was good to get a couple different sides of the downtown area today. So that's really helpful. Appreciate the staff for getting us prepped as well too. And Chief Mendoza for coming out and speaking to us too. And great discussion tonight. Thanks.
Okay, Charity.
Nothing really much to add, just thank you to staff. Taylor and I had an opportunity today to go over the TSP in more lengthy depth. So that was kind of nice to get that handled, and just appreciate everybody coming out. And yeah, just kind of echoing what Jerry said, if there's issues in the community, please reach out to your local law enforcement. I mean, I know we got some hot spots in town, and there's certainly problem areas, and I know Clackamas County is very well aware of it, but I think hopefully with having a new deputy coming in Wednesday and then another one getting trained up and put in March, I'm hoping that some issues will be cleaned up. But yeah, with growth comes problems, and that's kind of where we are. So we're just trying to mitigate it as best we can and still stick to the letter of the law, while also trying to embrace the spirit of the law and what the community wants. It's a hard balance, but here we are. So thanks for coming, and thank you for all of your thoughts and comments.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. As always, I see a lot of faces that I always see, and I love seeing new ones. I'm really sorry about the Cascadia Ridge and the Comcast situation. I mean, it does affect me. I will admit that. But it's really disappointing, and I'm glad the city is working to get that taken care of. I really appreciate how collaborative we all are. It's really productive. I like it. Thank you to staff. I couldn't do my job if you didn't do yours. Thank you.
All right, Mike.
Appreciate everyone coming out tonight. I share in the pain of the Cascadia Ridge. I now have a transformer, a fire hydrant, and a Comcast terminal coming on my property, so I can appreciate that, blocking the access to my side yard. So appreciate everyone coming out, and I would just encourage people, if you have a specific issue, to speak to a specific item, because that's something that the council can address. If you speak in generalities, it's hard to really identify your concern. So the concern about a parking lot being not safe to be able to feel comfortable to go through, that's something that can specifically be looked at, and it's measurable. So if you have a problem with something and you identify a specific thing and you come back to us in 3 weeks and you're having the same issue, then you can say that we're not listening to you. But if you speak in generalities, it's really hard to adjust a swath of things, because then it's never measurable. So if you have a concern that you want to get addressed, just try to define it really well, so that it's something that an outcome can be measurable on. And we're happy to look at anything that's of concern to anyone in the community and be held accountable for not following through on something that's a concern to you. So I hear that, and I'll be looking into that, and we'll take a look at it in a few weeks. So yeah, appreciate everyone for coming.
Okay, since we all went through the greetings and we all turned back to crime, I guess I'll go with that tonight. I tour this city twice a week, bottom to top, all over it. I look for everything that looks troublesome. And there's a lot. There's a lot that's not reported to Clackamas County. So their view of sunshine and rainbows is kind of different than what's really happening here, unfortunately. There are a lot of things here that fall outside that parameter where people don't report. I'm finding a lot of people don't report to the police because they don't think anything will get done. And I get that. I get that. We've been going through this police thing for a while, but I think the way we're going to solve this, I've seen a lot of fences going up, and that's good. I think neighborhood watches need to be reinstituted on a big scale so that we can watch these neighborhoods. And I think we as a city got to meet on a more regular base with Mendoza and anybody that wants to meet with us from CCSO on a more quarterly aspect to where we're all involved so we can get an idea of what we're seeing numbers wise, when it fluctuates, when it's high, when it's low. A lot of other cities meet on a regular basis. I have yet to sit down with Mendoza. I mean, unless I talk to you first and get a hold of him, he never contacts me and I can't get a hold of him. So I think that contact needs to happen so we have better touch with our services in the city of Estacada so that we can control more of this crime that's happening that is not being reported. But other than that, I appreciate every one of you tonight. And we thank you for coming out. And obviously you had a lot to say and there was a lot on the table. So thank you for that. And we will see you the next time. We're going into executive session. So I'm going to have to shut down the meeting. Everybody will have to leave the room except for media. And they'll have to turn all recording devices off at that time.
Why don't you you can read the statement before we turn.
Yeah, I'll
we'll
read
have
the
to turn off the Zoom meeting and then, so it'll just be no camera, no sound until
Yep.
we are done with the executive session, but we can read that.
All right, I will now read the statement. Do I have that one? Yeah, no, I don't have the other one.
There was one about property transaction there.
Got it right here. Okay. I got it. Property transaction. Okay, I will now read the Estacada City Council will now meet in executive session. The executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192-660, which allows the council to meet in executive session to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision will be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will return to open session and welcome the audience back into the room. So thank you.
Thank you.
will re-enter the city council.
Let's see if there's anybody still out.
Probably the guy with the tripod.
Okay. Go ahead. You wanna? I don't think anybody's coming back in.
I think maybe not. Okay, they can watch the end on the video, I guess,
That's
if
right.
they're curious, yeah.
I move that we authorize staff to proceed with negotiations with interested parties.
Second.
Okay, first and second, all those in favor?
I,
All those opposed? Okay, motion
Okay,
passes.
all right,
Great, thank you.
we'll carry on,
Thank
thank you.
And we will now say goodnight to all our wonderful people in here, all two of them, three of them. Okay.
Melanie, is there a place that Officer Bigler, Deputy Bigler goes